Welcome to the What You Missed podcast, where we talk, debate, and sometimes even argue, but overall let you know what you missed. Thank you so much for joining us on our 6th episode. My name is Andrew, and I'm here, as always, with my trusty co-host, Anson. However, today's podcast is not an ordinary one, as we also have third-round draft pick, Ohio State alumni, and national championship winner, Ben Hartsock. Today is an all-encompassing evaluation of the college football bracket and who we think your 2025 college football national championship will be.
Fellas, I appreciate you having me on. Pumped to be here.
Thank you so much for coming.
But before we get into the deep analysis, I'm fired up to be on the pod. I need to know, how did this pod come to become a reality?
Basically, I was in my car driving home from my sister's soccer tournament, and I was like, you know what would be cool was if I had a podcast. And then when I got home, I texted Anson, and he was like, let's do it. And he was like, I've always wanted to start a sports podcast. And I was like, okay. And so we just researched as much as we could. We were like, we're going to make this first episode, bought some mics, and now we're kind of here.
So was Anson the first round draft pick as your co-host, or did you float some other?
Anson was the first round.
Oh yeah. What's it feel like to be a first round draft pick?
It was great. I thought it happened where I came to you and was like, dude, you've always wanted to do a podcast.
Uh-oh, bad blood. Now we got a little bit of
his idea was sports.
I didn't have a sports podcast. I knew someone who always wanted to do a podcast. So me and Andrew got together.
These are the kind of things that can break up a band, boys. We're gonna have to get out. We're gonna have to figure out to get to the bottom of this to see.
I trust Anson's.
Can we share credit? Can we? Are we
sharing
okay?
credit. Andrew is our tech guy here. He knows what he's doing. I write most of the work, and we share this business. Yeah, because we're getting paid for this.
This is a business?
Yeah.
So, all right. So when Pat McAfee is fired and you guys replace him as the #1 podcast in all the land, are you guys going to be okay? Because we don't want, once the money comes in, people start getting nasty. You guys need to maintain this relationship. You feel like you're going to be able to do that?
Well, I feel like if we share yards, we can share money. That's kind of my philosophy, is if we can share a yard and I can walk through Anson's front yard without him carrying or his dad carrying, I think we're good.
So, Cochran, you do the tech. You're in charge of tech?
Yeah, I had been researching podcast mics for about 3 months.
Okay, Anson, you're in charge of script writing?
Yes, I do. I'm not in charge of it. I guess I am now, but I have been doing most of the writing just because I like to get ahead of stuff.
Who's in charge of punctuality? Because I'd like to put a complaint for Cochran. Not super punctual during the... we had a pickup time, and Andrew, I don't know, did you do a perm? Maybe it was like a little hair gel that you were doing upstairs?
Yeah, because they can see me through the screen,
Well, I just didn't know. I get there, and you guys are like, I need some time.
Yeah.
And then what?
Our blue logo is menacing, so I have to make sure I'm looking good for the blue logo.
All right.
They can definitely see us through. Yeah. Well, first thing we have is just kind of who the first round games are and who's going to be playing in them and what we think is going to be the hardest thing for the underdog and what they're going to have to overcome.
Well, for me, I have Clemson, Texas, first game we're going through. I think for Clemson, the underdog...
Hold on. Who are you rooting for? Who are your rooting interests in this game?
Well, me personally, I'm a South Carolina fan, so obviously Texas.
Me personally, I don't care.
Okay, you're not a Georgia
So I'm
fan.
not I'm a Georgia fan. Everybody knows this, but we've beaten Texas twice. We've beaten both these teams this year. I could care less. It doesn't really matter to me.
Okay, so you're saying Georgia's your rooting interest, but not. That's kind of like. Are you staying impartial, or are you doing like a Kirk Herbstreit where you're not gonna?
Right, I'm not gonna say.
You're giving deep analysis,
right.
But you're a South Carolina guy.
Yeah.
So why does that mean you like Texas?
Because they're not Clemson.
Okay. Oh, You're against Clemson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody against
I don't
Clemson?
like the color orange. So.
Yeah, it's orange versus orange.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Which team needs this win the most?
Oh, Clemson for sure.
No. All of them. Of all of the first round, which team needs this win the most?
Clemson.
Why so?
You still think?
I still think people need Clemson to win and beat Texas because I think Clemson's the easier team to play.
Okay, so I would say Clemson needs a win because Clemson's way of existing has come under fire.
Right.
Dabo Swinney has been resistant to the transfer portal and been a little more focused on, I call it college football classic.
Right, he's playing old school.
He plays old school, but he's also it's a little bit more about he's more of a developer of young people, and the wins come as a result. But right now the game is changing. This is the first time Clemson's been in the playoff, I think, in 3 or 4 years. They've been on the outside looking in. So it's a big win for them to show that he can prove his way of running a program is still viable. Because there's going to be a lot of people that says if he gets bounced in the first round, or if they go out and get beat by Texas handily, it's going to be more fuel on that fire that Clemson is obsolete. They're dead in the water.
Right, for sure.
Definitely. And I think it's crazy because Clemson was in this situation where if Miami loses and they win or whatever, and there was these, different things they had to go through, and that they're in this playoff is almost like a miracle. But it happened because they won the ACC championship and were able to go above everybody else. But they're number 12, and so, they need to prove themselves a lot. And Texas is not going to be, a very easy team to beat, especially for Clemson, who's had those easy teams that they've lost to.
Right, I think the main keys for Clemson to win this game is obviously stop the long ball. With Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning as the QB, that's going to be really good. You're going to be ready for Arch Manning. But then really it's just being able to stop their defensive and offensive line. Texas has the number 1 offensive line in the country. Most people are still okay, is it really though? But I think it is, and I would say they're also the 4th best defensive line. So they really need to stop them up front to win this game.
How confident are you guys? Which quarterback do you think has the advantage in this game?
Me personally, Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning?
Quinn Ewers or Cade Klubnik?
I think Quinn Ewers, just because he's such a pocket passer, and I think Clemson's defense will struggle with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I think the advantage is going to go to Quinn Ewers just because of this offensive line at Texas. This offensive line at Texas isn't going to let anyone through to the QB. So I think Quinn Ewers will prevail more and actually have a really good game.
Do you have a sense of which team you think, if one of the most basic evaluators of a team, a buddy of mine that he works for Fox, his name's Brock Heward, he always said, do a schoolyard pick'em. Which quarterback would you take? Which wide receiver group would you take? So Clemson versus Texas, which defense would you take? Which running back room would you take? I would take most every position group to the advantage of Texas.
I agree.
Yeah.
But Texas has also looked like a deer in the headlights twice this season.
Yeah.
When it got, the first game versus Georgia was, they looked like the way Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning both at halftime looked like they had gotten run over by a school bus.
Yeah.
So this game, honestly, it's a 12-point favorite to the Longhorns in it. I think Clemson has Clemson under Dabo Swinney has enough experience in these big games. Now the difference is Dabo has a bunch of experience, but most of the guys that are factors in this game, Klubnik hasn't played in a game this big.
Yeah.
And that defense, all those wide receivers, the young wide receivers' names escapes me. I want to say it's Golden, but it's not. Wesco. Wesco's a young freshman, so he's new to the program, got a ton of talent, but I always say this about college football is your relevance is constantly leaking, and Clemson has been on the outside, even though they won the ACC recently, obviously this year, or was in the championship this year, but they also have won it in previous years. They haven't been in the playoff. But I think Dabo's got a ton of experience here. Texas was there last year. I think this is a closer game than 12 points, but I would probably pick Texas to win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that.
And so people what is your opinion on different freshmen? So, because you see people like Marcel Reed for Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, how much do you think, just the time in, because you were obviously in college football, how much do you think your time and your experience inside of college football affects how you play?
Oh, a huge amount. One of the best things of college football today and players getting paid, that's another episode. I don't love college players getting paid, which sounds mean and nasty, but I have a reason behind it. But getting paid incentivizes guys to come back for another year. So Quinn Ewers came back this season, one, because he didn't get the draft grade that he liked to go to the NFL, and two, staying another year in college is profitable now. He's making more than $1 million this year, so it helps. So having a quarterback like Ewers, who has been streaky, but he has got a bunch of experience and a bunch of experience in these big games, is really, really important. Drew Allers, the quarterback at Penn State, he just made the announcement he's coming back for another year. If you look at all the quarterbacks in this bracket all over the field, you've got a huge amount of experience. Really, the only inexperienced guys in this situation are Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee and Kevin Jennings is a sophomore at SMU. Levitt at Arizona State, he's got a few years under his belt. Yeah, like all these guys are tremendously experienced. That's a little bit that's what has changed in the college football landscape a bunch. Is usually the best players were gone after 3 years. Even if they didn't get the draft grade they liked, they wanted to get out to go get their cash. Now they can get their cash in college. So you've got a bunch of guys like Will Howard at Ohio State. Dylan Gabriel broke every record that can be had because he played the bonus COVID year, so he's got a huge amount of experience. So all of these quarterbacks, we'll get it, like the NFL draft stuff is still a couple months away, but these guys aren't necessarily the NFL draft experts aren't going to be super fired up about any of these guys, really, but they've got a bunch of experience, and so they're battle tested as much as they're going to be, as high as their ceiling can be. They should be at that potential. They should be playing at that level in these games. That's why they're leading these teams. Is they've got a ton of veteran experience.
Yeah. Next up, we have Tennessee versus Ohio State, and so Ben, as an Ohio State alumni, I think I know which team you're playing for here.
Have you heard about what Tennessee's doing? The audacity, their fan base, Vol Nation, right? The Vol Nation.
Yeah.
They're well known. They're a passionate fan base. They've been lost in the desert for a long time. It's been a long time since they've been relevant nationally. But Josh Heupel's got this team going the right direction. They had success with Hendon Hooker a couple years ago. A bit of a step back with Joe Milton last year at quarterback. But Nico Iamaleava is a first-year starter. Their fan base is so fired up to be here. They're calling it Invade the Horseshoe. The Horseshoe is where Ohio State plays. It's their stadium. And they've put out one of these graphics of like Penn State has a whiteout. I heard on your guys' last episode you're fired up about a whiteout. Hey, did you hear back, Anson, from your application to go to college?
I did not.
You broke news last episode, right?
I'm still waiting on it.
Okay, hopefully
I'm waiting for the ball boy to go to the NFL as the ball boy, so I can step in that position.
So Tennessee, though, is excited to be going to Ohio State to the Horseshoe, but they're trying to checkerboard out. Instead of doing a whiteout, they do the checkerboard pattern in Neyland Stadium, their home stadium.
Yeah.
But they're actually trying to get a little movement going to try to get to the checkerboard pattern. They put out it was like an unofficial fan page, but a diagram of the Horseshoe of where the orange and the white scattered around. So I will tell you, Ohio State fans better buy all those tickets.
Yeah.
And not be
I want to see how
fans.
successful that actually is. And I have a question for you, and this was a crazy thing. But what is your opinion on the state of Ohio trying to make it illegal to plant your flag in the Horseshoe?
I hate it. Here's my stance on this. I stand with sportsmanship. I believe that you should be sportsmanlike. And I think that planting a flag is disrespectful and not very sportsmanlike.
Yeah.
But I do not want to ban flag planting.
Yeah.
Because college football petty is part of the sport. College, like the rivalries, a lot of times, like why I know the history of why Ohio State hates Michigan. The Ohio State-Michigan rivalry ties back to statehood.
Yeah.
Like when they were forming the state of Michigan and the state of Ohio, they were arguing over the strip of land called the Toledo Strip. And the way that it worked out is Ohio got the Toledo Strip and Michigan got the Upper Peninsula. That doesn't really have anything to do with the rivalry today, but that pettiness has persisted over the years. And so I love the college football petty of where Ohio State X's out all the Michigans during the game of Michigan and the horns down. Like, all of that stuff is just, it's silliness for rivalries and for college sports. So I think that in the realm of being petty, there are two things that are the most disrespectful that you can do. Planting a flag on your home field, and two, not shaking hands at the coin toss. I don't know if you saw in the last week of the season, Nebraska, Iowa, they had some college football petty, and the Nebraska players didn't shake hands at the coin toss before the game, and then Iowa went out and beat the brakes off of them. So if you're going to be petty, I'd say do it at the end of the game, not at the start of the game, because you fire up your opponent.
Yeah.
Now, what happened at Ohio Stadium with the flag planting? Do I wish they'd planted the flag? No. Do I think Ohio State had 60 minutes to stop them from having a celebration at the end of the game? Yes, you should have done it during that period. And ultimately, in a world where planting the flag and not shaking fans is kind of that top level of disrespect and petty, you better use it only sparingly. And for Michigan, they've had a bad year. They won the national championship last season. Before the Ohio State game, they had only won 6 games. It was a terrible year by their view. So for them beating Ohio State, that was their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They absolutely hit it out. So what did they do? They celebrated. They planted a flag. And I understand why the Ohio State players were mad about it, but you lost.
Yeah.
And in a world where college sports is play battle. I'm always very careful when you make comparisons, but college football is play war, play battle. And our field was conquered. And so when you're conquered, guess what? The people that win conquer your field, and they did it. So, and this isn't a new thing. Baker Mayfield made this famous 6 or 8 years ago when at Ohio Stadium, Oklahoma beat Ohio State at home, he planted a flag. Going back before that, when you guys were little, Terrell Owens did a celebration when he was playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. So went out on the Dallas Cowboys star and standed like, making a scene there. All the way back in the 90s, Ohio State danced on Wisconsin's W. So this pettiness has been going on for a long, long time. It's just, for whatever reason, this one got blown up into a full-blown fist fight.
Yeah, and then all the rivalries, just like the different flag plantings, it was just like Ohio State was like the domino effect, and now all of them just happened.
Yeah, it really did just happen like that.
But did you see Steve Sarkisian, the coach of Texas, he stopped his players from doing the flag plant. But now, what about this? Most of these fields are field turf. So there's really no...
Yeah.
It doesn't even go into the ground. But Arizona State, I can't remember who they beat their last game.
Arizona.
Was it? Okay, in the Arizona State game. They planted their trident. And it got 3, 4, 6 inches deep into the ground. That was of all the flag plantings, that one was the most satisfying because it was on a grass field and that fork went down into the ground. I thought that was pretty good.
It's called planting your flag. They kind of just like bounced off. You're just like, oh, and
it's more of a symbolic gesture.
Yeah, more of a symbolic thing.
Yeah.
Number 3, you have SMU.
Do you guys think that maybe Landon should plant a flag from the pulpit one day, like after he crushes like a real good Serbian? He just gets a Hebron flag.
He's like, take that,
That would be pretty funny.
Maybe they could have some pyro on the stage.
Yeah.
Gosh, we should talk with Mitch and Benj and see if we can get some traction.
Post it on the Instagram. We'll have more people showing up.
Yeah.
They'll be like, this is
smoking lights.
Place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 3, you have SMU versus Penn State. Now, I was somebody that didn't know much about SMU, as I was tricked the first episode into thinking that they could have been elephants. So I wasn't very just like confident in my knowledge on SMU. I've gotten a little more stats now. Anson was kind of an SMU doubter this whole time.
But then I take it back. I think SMU is doing better, but I really do think for them to win this game, they won. They need to be ready for this. They don't get chances like this. This is SMU's first time in the ACC. They go out, finish second in the ACC, lose the ACC championship to Clemson. But really, I think the main thing they need to do here is be able to block out this noise. We've talked about this every episode, pretty much, is that Penn State Stadium is so hard to play in. And really, for a team that just doesn't get this many chances, they have to be ready to go out and block out the noise. And really, the other thing is just use Penn State's backup QB leading as an advantage. you know that's going to take away a lot of the running opportunities, so be ready for the pass. And I think this is really the keys for SMU to win this game.
SMU, the reason why you guys say you feel like you didn't know much about them was because last year they were in the group of 5.
Mm-hmm.
They were a full class order of magnitude down from the power. It used to be the Power 5, now it's the Power 4. For what SMU did to get here is pretty staggering.
It is pretty impressive.
There has been 2 years ago, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston all left their group of 5 conferences to come up to the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
Those teams were all at or near the bottom of the Big 12 in their first year. That jump from the group of 5 to the Power 4 kicked them in the teeth. Mm-hmm. Now, if you back up a little more, there's another jump in college football that has been happening more frequently is the FCS, the football championship, as opposed to the FBS, which is bowls, where bowls are played versus the college football playoffs, the FCS championship. North Dakota, like Carson Wentz went there. Was it Jordan Love that played at North Dakota State? That's for the Packers. I think that's right. Anyways, but like Liberty came up to the FBS, and those teams did pretty well. But these teams that jumped from Group of 5 to Power 4 have struggled. SMU deserves some extra flowers thrown at their feet because they've got their way into the ACC, and they're, one of my buddies calls it, they're walk-ons. They aren't even taking revenue. SMU donors, they're donors, the people with the big money, are willing to say, we just want to be in the ACC, and they said, we don't even want to share the revenue. They pushed back their revenue share. I want to say it's 8 or 10 years. I have to double check on that. That's where I need a producer. I have producers usually during my show that when I say, what is it exactly? They make sure to get the details right. So we'll have to put this in post.
Hey, Judah.
In post that, yeah, we might need to get Judah. Is Judah good at operating the Google machine? We'll get some AI. We'll use some AI. Yeah, Chat GPT to check in with us. But so for SMU to come up to the Power 4 and in its first year win the ACC conference, well, not win. Clemson beat them. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, but to get to the ACC championship and to get into the 12-team playoff is a massive achievement. It's impressive that they kept Rhett Lashley, their coach. That anytime a young up-and-coming coach has a season like that, other teams are like, why don't you come coach for us? Why don't you come to a team in the Big Ten? So they've locked him down that way. So I think it's a really cool story. They should lose to Penn State. Penn State is a superior team in this game, but their story, I feel like, isn't, in all the excitement of all the things that are happening in college football, SMU's story is kind of getting lost because there's so many other things that are going on in real time. You mentioned you thought SMU was, Anson tricked you that it was an elephant. Yeah. How about this? SMU Mustang, Ford Mustang. We rode in a Ford Mustang on the way here. The same emblem. If the emblem that's on a Ford Mustang is the same emblem that SMU uses, but the Ford Mustang is running west towards open spaces. The SMU Mustang is running east, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but that's the difference. Yeah, on a Ford Mustang, it's going left or west, if you're looking at a map, but the SMU Mustang is always running east.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I knew it was like the same symbol. I didn't know if it was.
Yeah. Definitely very similar.
All right, so what about this game? You said, Anson, you said that you think not having Perbula is a big deal.
Right.
Okay. Who do you think, well, I'll answer my own question. Tyler Warren, who just won the Mackey Award, best tight end in college football, had 17 catches against USC. And in that game, he also caught a touchdown pass where he snapped the football. That's pretty awesome. I snapped a football once. I was playing for the Tennessee Titans. It was kind of similar to the situation that Penn State was in, where they did a kind of a swinging gate, like a crazy formation, where everybody's kind of split out to the left and a couple people right around the football. And so I was with the Tennessee Titans. Vince Young played at Texas, was the quarterback, and it was a situation where we were, whatever the defense did to cover this kind of wacky formation would tell the quarterback what to do. He was either going to run it, he was going to throw it to me, or he was going to throw it out to where all the other guys were out on the far side of the field. So we line up, and this was the start of a playoff game, NFL playoffs, big deal. And I've never snapped a football before. But I snapped the ball, And the way that the defense aligned, he should have thrown it to me. Vince wasn't super well known for studying the game plan. He just decided to run it himself. And so he didn't throw it to me. So I did get to snap a football in an NFL playoff game, but I didn't get to snap it and also catch a pass the way Tyler Warren did. So
you should have. I actually watched that game, Penn State versus USC. And I was so impressed by like the different things the different trick plays they were doing, and two, like he has an arm too. Like he can throw the ball.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, he is great.
If any other year where Travis Hunter weren't so incredibly versatile, we would have spent way more time talking about Tyler Warren and his versatility.
Definitely.
One of the unique things about Warren that makes him so difficult to cover is when you've got an incredible wide receiver, you put double coverage on him, right? And that you can commit extra resources to cover, and it's still difficult. There's plenty of guys that can still get open. But when you have a tight end like Warren that is so versatile, it's a trickier. PJ Fleck's the coach at Minnesota. After Minnesota got beat by Penn State, PJ Fleck got up on the podium and he said, "We knew Tyler Warren was the game plan. We built the entire week's defensive game plan about stopping Tyler Warren, and he still caught 7 for 108 yards." Why? Well, when you're that big, there's a couple different ways you try to attack a tight end. If you think he's running routes, we need to put a safety on him to have a bit of an advantage athletically. Well, then what you can do, Andy Koldenicki is the new offensive coordinator for Penn State, and he's really done a good job of maximizing Tyler Warren's talent. So if they go out and they line up in a nickel package, meaning let's say they bring in a smaller defender specifically for Tyler Warren, or even if they use a safety, say base defense, and use a safety to cover him, you can audible out based on just who we know is in the game. And you say, okay, we're going to compress it down and we're going to do a run play where Tyler Warren's going to have a massive advantage against the safety and we can run the football. If you try to split them out, and they've got a big guy on him, if they put a big guy, if they put another linebacker that's kind of similar size to Tyler Warren, then they can split them out, and you're in an advantage because Tyler Warren is such a good route runner, and linebackers that big are going to struggle to cover him. Then, if you try to put 2 or 3 people on him, if you try to double cover him, you can put him back at the quarterback position, and you can throw the ball, and you've wasted multiple defenders on someone that's just standing there throwing the football. So that's why everybody knew since early in the season how talented and versatile Tyler Warren was, but the cat and mouse, the chess match of audibling in and out of play calls based on personnel, based on formations, it's really, really challenging to do. That's why a guy like that is so impressive. Now, but Anson, you mentioned Pribula as the backup opted out or put his name in the transfer portal because he wants to go be a starter somewhere else. Right. So now they don't have... Pribula wasn't just the backup. He had a package in every game.
Right, they actually used him.
Yeah, they actually used him, and so now he's not there. But it doesn't affect... If there's a team that's built to be able to handle that, having Tyler Warren is nicer. If Arch Manning's got similar packages with Texas, right, where they use him as a runner. Right. If they lose Arch Manning, they don't have another guy like that on their roster that they can sub into that. Tyler Warren can be that guy with Bo Pribula not in the game. So... interesting, yeah. It's an interesting dynamic to this matchup. Andrew, what do you think about this game? You got anything interesting?
I don't know. I wouldn't say hater, but I've kind of been a Penn State hater from like the beginning of our podcast. Not because like I just feel like the teams that they've played, when they played them, they haven't impressed me. Like they haven't played any really big teams, but Oregon, I believe. Mm-hmm. So. I just think
Penn State didn't play Oregon. They played
Ohio State. That's right.
They played Ohio State.
So, to me,
they did play Oregon in the championship game.
And played them to the last.
So they did play both.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they definitely did better in that championship game. But that was kind of like my awakening of like, okay, Penn State is actually a good team. Penn State's a contender. They can do stuff. But before that, it had just been like that close game with Minnesota. They like Minnesota, like you said, was able to study just exactly what they're going to do. But at that same point, you shouldn't have that close of a game with an unranked team. And I know it happens like once or twice, but Penn State has had a lot of close games with people who like shouldn't really be contenders. And so yes, Penn State is a good team, but yeah, it's just like I definitely do think they will beat SMU, but it's just like the different things and just they hadn't really proved themselves until like 2 weeks ago for me.
So I'm curious now. I don't want to go out of this is your guys' show. You're driving this ship. Do you guys want to talk about? I want to hear your guys' opinion on should Bo Prabula, the backup quarterback, was he in the right to put his name in the transfer portal, or do you guys you want to do it now or later?
I think we are getting to a QB situation later in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back to that. Now, all right. So then I'll ask you this about Penn State. Do you think Penn State, like, which of the teams, going back to like pressure wise, I feel like Penn State, the 12-team playoff was built, and Penn State was always the example of Penn State was always good but never great. Their head coach, James Franklin, said this 5 or 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. He goes, we're a great football team, but we're not an elite football team because they've been stuck in the purgatory of being behind Ohio State and being Michigan. Well, now they still got beat by Ohio State. They didn't have to play Michigan because they got rid of divisions. But now, here they are. They're in the expanded playoff. We always talked about 2 teams. The expanded playoff, we'll get Penn State in, and you'll get Ole Miss in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ole Miss is sitting at home. They didn't make it. Like, they wet the bed and didn't even get a spot at the dance.
Right.
Penn State is in. How do you think that impacts the pressure? Do you think that adds an element of pressure to anybody on that team?
Yeah, definitely. I think because it's just almost like a breakthrough. Like, we've been good. We've always been good. But we've never had this breakthrough where we're actually going to the playoffs and we're actually like a good contender. And so, yeah, I think the 12-team playoff is really cool. I think it's not perfect. I don't think it's like at its final stage of how it's going to be because you've even seen people like Nick Saban like talk about how he doesn't like it. Well, I mean, that could be because Alabama didn't make it. But you have seen him kind of be like, well, this isn't the greatest thing in the world, or oh, I don't love this about it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's definitely cool, and it gives those other opportunities and also more games, which I can't complain about.
And Penn State has pressure because they've got the easiest path, which is kind of wild. The number 1 overall seed, Oregon, they have to face off against either Ohio State or Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
That's rough sledding.
That's rough.
Mm-hmm.
The Boise State is the 3rd seed, or Penn State is the 6th seed, and they play SMU, that was a Group of 5 team last year.
Yeah,
they're here and they deserve their spot, but they're also, and then if they win, they get Boise State. So Penn State has to deal with, if you get bounced, you're like, you just got beat by a team that was barely in the Power 4, just first year in the Power 4, and you didn't even make it to Boise State, or if they get beat by Boise State, let's say, then you say you got beat by the 1 Group of 5 team in this whole thing. I think that adds an extra element to it as well.
Yeah.
That does change a lot of it.
The last one we have is Indiana versus Notre Dame.
Upset alert.
Really?
That's my upset
alert. I think Indiana is the worst team in the 12-team playoffs.
Come on, Anson.
See, so
look,
I think
you didn't Google Kurt Signetti. You didn't Google him. Head coach of Indiana. Google him. He's the guy. That's what he said. He's famously said, he goes, I win everywhere I go. Google me.
That's crazy because I understand he's the guy, but he doesn't have the players to go out and beat Notre Dame. I think SMU would beat them. I had a lot more faith in Indiana before the Ohio State game. Mm-hmm. The Ohio State game is the only hard game they played, and after that, I just didn't see it from them. So I don't think Indiana is a great team. I think they've been putting points on the board. I think that's what they're going to have to do to beat Notre Dame. I don't think they come close to Notre Dame.
Indiana, again, going back to that schoolyard pick'em, if you lined every player up versus Notre Dame and you ran a 40-yard dash, Notre Dame's going to win more of those matchups. If you vertical jump, right, Notre Dame will win more of those matchups. Well, but the same thing happened when Ohio State played Michigan. Ohio State would have won all of them if you're just doing weightlifting and box jumps. Yeah. Michigan beat them. So I understand Notre Dame's the more talented team. Indiana maybe doesn't have as much first team all bus. I always call the guys that look like werewolves like your first team all bus, meaning when we show up, you get off the bus first to intimidate everybody else on that team. Indiana doesn't have those types of guys, but they have the number 1 defense running. They have the number 1 rush defense, not in just the Big Ten, in all of college football.
But who have they played?
The Indiana Hoosiers. It doesn't matter. They played a Power 4 Big Ten slate of football games. I understand the strength of schedule thing has been well documented. This is my stance, and this is a podcast where we argue our points of view. If you are in the group of the Power 4, if you were in the Power 4, one of the Power 4 conferences, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, and SEC, you can gripe about the strength of schedule. You can say that Indiana played the worst teams in the Big 10. You can say that Georgia had to play all the best teams in the SEC. But at the end of the day, we have, over the course of history, separated the group of 5 is second-class citizens. They are JV. They are not on caliber with the Power. It used to be the Power 5. Now it's down to the Power 4. The Power 4 is still held. This is how I argue it. That the Power 4 is held in a different regard, and Indiana has taken care of every school that is put in front of it. A similar strength of schedule was the Michigan Wolverines last year, and they won the whole thing. So ultimately, they played their game versus Ohio State. That game was nip and tuck early in the game, and Indiana, which Curt Cignetti, their coach, he attributed a lot of it to crowd noise, but they muffed a punt, or actually the punter dropped a snap to kick a punt and gifted Ohio State a touchdown, and then the second half they allowed a kick or a punt return for a touchdown on Ohio State. That's enough. Like in a game where 2 evenly matched teams, you're talking about when they're 2 evenly matched college teams, that's closer to an NFL matchup where the margins are so thin, and Indiana got beat on the margins. I don't think Curt Cignetti's going to make that same mistake twice. He is this new coach at Indiana is more Nick Saban than a Santa Claus. He is not a friendly, warm guy. He's hard nosed. I met him at Big Ten Media Days this summer, and I said, Coach Cignetti, you're pretty plain spoken, and today's athletes usually don't really like to be talked to in that way. And he looked at me and goes, the good ones want to be talked to that way, and that's what he's got. He's got a bunch of dudes on Indiana that he brought a bunch of transfers in. He brought over 20-some guys from JMU where he had a bunch of success. Mm-hmm. He brought in guys from Wake Forest. He brought in guys from that were Curtis Rourke. Curtis Rourke was the quarterback, was the MAC Player of the Year, maybe Offensive Player of the Year, or the MAC Player of the Year. And he comes up and he's got all of those guys where it's like 5 fingers come together to make one fist. And it's working all really, really well. I think Indiana's going to beat Notre Dame in this game. Oh, and my biggest reason why is Indiana's number 1 rush defense in all of college football. Notre Dame is top 10, maybe top 5. I know I'm certain top 10 in running the football. Notre Dame's offense is running with Love, and I can't remember the name of their backup running. They got 2 running backs. Mainly Jadarian Love, who's a little injured. We're not sure how healthy he's going to be. Yeah. And then their backup's good. And then they're running it with Riley Leonard. When Notre Dame has gotten sideways early in the season, Riley Leonard was throwing the ball too much. And so they stopped that. They have the amount of throws that Notre Dame is doing has shrunk the more the season has progressed. So if Indiana can make Notre Dame play left-handed, make them throw the ball, which isn't their game plan, that swings advantage to Indiana. And then offensively, Indiana's offense is both running the ball and passing the ball, one of the most efficient, meaning not every time, but more often than not when the ball is in their hands, they score points, a lot of them touchdowns.
I do see what you're saying.
I think Ben just convinced me.
But I'll know this, I'm terrible at making picks.
Yeah.
In a world where every Friday we call it the 6-pack of picks, where we pick the 6 biggest games and we've got to pick them. I'm like dead last in our pick 'em. So I think my analysis is good, but my ability to pick is terrible. So take that for what it's worth.
Just like a little quick thing, like what is your opinion on Marcus Freeman and like what he's been able to build at Notre Dame?
Well, I think he's a great young coach, but that doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience. It's too early to say. Like I think I understand why they hired him, but it wasn't because he was their first choice. Notre Dame wanted to hire Luke Fickell, who's now at Wisconsin, but Luke Fickell, so much of the college football calendar is messy and problematic. Luke Fickell was taking Cincinnati to the college football playoff a couple years ago, and Luke Fickell said, "I'm not going to talk anything about going into coach a new team until I'm done with this team." Right? He was doing right, kind of like back to that conversation about Bo Prabula. Bo Prabula is doing the opposite of that, but Fickell said, because we all knew Luke Fickell is a Catholic and wanted to, like, I'm pretty sure he would have taken that job.
Yeah.
But he didn't get it because Notre Dame wanted to lock down its guys, so they went with their backup, and it was Marcus Freeman. Mm-hmm. He's never been a head coach before. He's in his third year now, maybe his second or third year, and he sure seems to fit what Notre Dame wants to be. Notre Dame wants to be tradition and clean cut. The guy gets his hair cut like 3 times a week, and he looks like he deep squats, like does weightlifting every day, hour of the day. So I really like him. I think he's good for Notre Dame. Ultimately, I think it's too early to say whether or not he's ultimately the long-term right guy for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Well, moving on to our next segment, we have which is the better pick. So we talked about how Nick Saban was kind of mad about it. Which do you think? Do you agree with the choice of SMU into the playoffs, or do you think it should have been Alabama?
Well, you have to decide, because when they made the selection, it was the argument over the best team or the most deserving team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So last year, what happened to Florida State knocked us all back. Florida State went undefeated, won the ACC championship, and didn't get in.
Yeah.
Why? Because Jordan Travis got hurt.
Right.
And so the committee said they're not the best team.
Yeah.
Okay? That logic, like that, you can argue that logic, but at the end of the day, the majority of placing these teams was most deserving. Who made it to a conference championship? There was one of the first ones. Ohio State was on its third string quarterback, maybe not the best team. They went to the Big Ten championship and boat raced Wisconsin. They got in not necessarily because they were the best team, but because they deserved it. They beat the Big Ten. They beat the brakes off the Big Ten championship game, and they ran that gauntlet. So, as a result of what happened last year, we were all waiting. There's this new the new executive director of the College Football Playoff Committee. His name's Rich Clark. At the first game of the season, he went on College Game Day, and he said he said very clearly, like he took a crow hop, like he wanted to make sure to get this message clearly. Our job is to put the 12 best teams into the playoff. Now, if we're picking between SMU and Alabama in that last spot, if you asked every one of these teams that's in the 12-team playoff, which team is the better team, they will say that Alabama is the better team.
Yeah.
But
Alabama is the better team.
But Alabama had unexplainable losses to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. So even though they were, quote, the better team, they could be the better team, they had losses that couldn't be explained away. SMU didn't have those losses. They, outside of the loss to BYU that was with their previous quarterback. They benched their starting quarterback, Preston Stone. BYU won all the games all the way up till the SEC championship. Played competitively, and the ACC championship. Played competitive in that game, and so they were the more deserving team.
Yeah.
And I don't have any problems with it whatsoever.
Yeah, I think if you asked those other top 12 teams who they would be more scared to play, I think all of them would say Alabama.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, I think SMU is definitely the more deserving team. And if you look at just the losses that Alabama had, it was just like they couldn't allow that into the playoffs. And what my dad said was, you either get that loss to Oklahoma or you get that loss. It was Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You either get that loss to Oklahoma or you can get that loss to Vanderbilt, but you can't have both.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have both of those losses just glaring on your schedule.
This is an unintended consequence of the 12-team playoff. I was not a fan of the 12-team playoff because I was worried about the stakes. Like Ohio State, Oregon, earlier in the season really didn't have – Ohio State losing that game, it didn't really affect them any. Alabama beating Georgia. Was it Georgia beat Alabama or Alabama beat Georgia? Alabama beat Georgia.
Yeah.
That game was awesome, but it didn't really have any stakes. And so I was worried about those kind of games being like, oh, that's whatever, that's kind of cool. But those games, so I was wrong. I'm saying I was wrong with that. But the reason why I was against it, as it pertains now to the 12 teams, it's an impossible task. it was really hard to seed 4 teams.
Oh, yeah.
Because the difference between the 4th best team and the 5th best team of being in or out is hard, but it is way harder when you're dealing with the 12th team versus the 13th team. Because the 12th team versus the 13th team is already, by definition, they're a little worse. Both of these teams aren't really that great. They all have warts. Alabama's had 3 losses. SMU had played in a bunch of close games and played, the one game they had 5 turnovers and still came back to win. And so I would always say winning in college football was about excellence. It's like, I never want the Navy SEALs, whatever mile you have to run to qualify for the Navy SEALs, or 5 minutes, whatever it is. I never want it to go to 5 minutes, 30 seconds just so more people can get into the SEALs. I want getting into being the Navy SEALs to be absolutely of the highest quality. That's why I wanted to keep a 4-team playoff, is being in the 4-team playoff, you had to basically win every game except one. You got one mulligan. Now we're in the 12-team playoff, and you've got 2 teams with 2 losses. There's going to be times where there's teams with Clemson, 3 losses in the college football playoff. So you're already, by definition, it's an impossible task to try to parse between most deserving or best team, especially when it's this far down, the 12 versus 13.
Yeah, and I was wondering, in y'all's opinion, do you think that all those games that Alabama lost, do you think they would have been lost with Saban still as the head coach, or do you think it's hard to tell?
Yeah, it's not just Saban being the coach, it's also Caleb Downs, the safety at Ohio State. Would he have stayed and been there, right? There's, I can't remember, there were a handful of other players that transferred out of Alabama. I'm not ready to throw Kalen DeBoer out. Ultimately, this is his one mulligan. He's got to be in next year, or Bama fans are going to say, "Uh-oh, I don't know if this is the right guy." It's easier to get in. Throughout the majority of the 4-team era, you could write Alabama in ink. You knew they were in more often than not.
Yeah.
Now that it's easier, DeBoer needs to get them in next year. This was his one mulligan. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you saw this. This is news even just today. Ryan Williams, their unbelievable true freshman. I'm pretty sure I saw he went in the portal. That's a big loss. Yeah. That's a big loss for Alabama.
Very good. I think, for me, just thinking about Alabama or LSU, or Alabama or SMU, I'm sorry. I think, as a Georgia fan, if you ask me one team I don't want to play, it's Alabama. And I think Alabama just really has Georgia's number. And so I think Alabama is a better team. I think losses make sense. Losses, SMU to BYU and Clemson, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, both 6-6, barely in a bowl game. I understand that, but the wins are what changes it for me. It's Georgia, Alabama's beat Georgia, who's 11-2 and number 2 seed in the playoffs, LSU and Missouri. But SMU's best wins are Pitt and Louisville. So that's the thing. That's the thing for me that I think Alabama would absolutely blow SMU out of the water. So I do think Alabama deserved the spot more than SMU did, but SMU did do a lot more to try to get to the spot.
But see, that goes back to the same argument with Indiana. Yeah, it was their best wins were Louisville and what was the other one you said?
Pitt.
Louisville and Pitt. They're still Power 4. And if the SEC wants to be mad about that, the SEC, you just brought in Texas, who's one of the favorites to win the whole thing. And so the SEC, you've built a really difficult conference for you to qualify for. And so now you're mad that you didn't get the 4 teams in that you liked, but this is a creation of their own making in that way.
Yeah.
All right, now we're getting into Bill Belichick, the former 6-time Super Bowl champion, is now in the college football world, and he is the coach at the UNC Tar Heels. What do we think about this, and why do we think he's even doing this?
I want you guys to go first. I've been talking too much.
I think it's definitely interesting because honestly, I didn't think that he would come back at all. But Anton brought up an interesting thing before the podcast. Was maybe he's just bored. And I don't think that's probably not his sole reason to coming back to it. But yeah, I think a lot of the times, you saw Tom Brady retire and then unretire, and he was like, I can't leave football. It's these guys' lives, and then also, you see maybe Bill Belichick wants to prove himself that he can also win college football titles too. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think Bill Belichick is definitely undisputed one of, if not the greatest coach of all time. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just seeing. Yeah, I don't know how well he's going to do because he's been out of the world of football, still doing stuff with football, but not 100% like coaching a team. But yeah, it's definitely a different world, and college football is definitely different from NFL. So I think it's definitely interesting, and like I think he'll definitely thrive, but it's just like seeing where his recruiting class is with UNC. I don't think he's just gonna be able to like magically pull it out of the water where they're a playoff team, like a playoff contender, like in next year, like the years to come, maybe somewhere down the road. But
why do you think he'll thrive?
I don't know. I think just like the coaching, we talked about it before. Like Nick Saban would like talk, like the different discussions he had was like with like his coaches, and like just powerful coaches will like just instill like determination in like different people. And so I think he will do well as a coach. Not saying that UNC is going to win a lot of games, but I think just the people. I think it probably excites a lot of the UNC players to say, "Hey, we're going to get to play under this guy now," and that might make them more determined. I don't think that they're going to be great, and I think maybe Bill Belichick is
$10 million a year to not be great is a lot, and that doesn't make sense.
I don't think they're going to be great.
Okay, why?
I just don't think. I think a lot of people underestimate how big of a change it is to go from NFL to college or college to NFL. We saw Nick Saban do it. He went playing. I think the Dolphins he coached.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? I think and he didn't thrive there as much as he did in college. It's a really big change, and it's not. I mean, sure, Nick Saban like got a coach at Alabama, but Bill Belichick's at UNC, and UNC just isn't a thing. I mean, it's not. It's really different though. It's a different rules. It's different kind of teams. They're not pros. I mean, it's UNC. It's not Oregon, the top of like the playoffs, but it's almost a different schedule. I mean, it's a job for some guys, but like it's not like in the NFL. It's a job for every single person. They have to be there every day for. I know you experience this. Like you have to be there to practice. Like these people have school first, and then it comes football.
Do you guys know what a BlackBerry is? Have you ever heard of a BlackBerry?
Yes.
What was it?
a phone.
And what about them? Like, what's the story of the BlackBerry?
You weren't talking the fruit, were you?
No. I'm
No.
talking
I was
about
thinking fruit.
Oh.
No, the old phone. So I don't know if Bill Belichick is the last BlackBerry. Like I love the BlackBerry. It had an actual screen, actual keyboard, and I could text real fast. Never liked the iPhone. So I don't know if Bill Belichick is the last BlackBerry, meaning this technology that's totally obsolete, or the first iPhone that's going to be the biggest thing to ever happen. Because what's happening with college sports is it's becoming the NFL.
Yeah.
Like it is happening as we speak. So I think it's going to be a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Because as it sits right now, you still have to recruit.
Yeah.
And try to picture Bill Belichick sitting in someone's living room and they said, "Coach, I want to see you do the electric slide for me to commit." Like those kind of stories happen. There's videos of Nick Saban doing the electric slide in a high school recruit's living room. Last year, Luke Fickell, who is not a warm and fuzzy kind of guy, was on a boat. He had a bunch of recruits up to Wisconsin, and he was and they were out on a boat, like just having a fun on a ski day. They said, "Coach, I'll commit to Wisconsin if you jump in the lake." Luke Fickell didn't want to jump in that lake. Guess what he did? Jumped in the lake. I don't see Bill Belichick doing that.
Yeah, that does make sense.
So that now maybe in 3-4 years they've got salary caps and contracts. That's what Bill Belichick spent his whole Hall of Fame career doing.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet. He might be a little too early because he's not going to coach for 8 more years. He's 72 years old. I think he'll be 73. He's older than the guy they replaced, Mac Brown, and they said they replaced Mac Brown saying we got to get younger. This is totally speculation for me. Bill Belichick, the Patriots dynasty, we found out Belichick needed Brady. Brady didn't need Belichick.
Right.
Brady won a Super Bowl when he left and went to Tampa Bay. Belichick, the dynasty ended. Maybe he needs to validate himself to say, yeah, you know what, I won in the NFL and I can also win in college. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I think what you said though, Anson, is true. He's not going to retire. Guys like that don't retire.
Yeah.
One of my old coaches, he was a coach at Ohio State, but he was one of the most successful coaches at Michigan State history, Mark D'Antonio. When he retired a couple years ago, I could tell, and I did an interview with him, he wasn't going to sit on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't going to go play golf. And since then, he's still retired, but he just travels around and goes to football practices. He knows everybody, so he'll spend a week at Akron, he'll spend a week at Notre Dame, he'll spend a week at all these different places. So Belichick was around the game last year when he wasn't coaching. His kid is the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies. There was some speculation, never really, I don't think it's really true, but there was some talk about Belichick took the North Carolina job and was going to bring his son as the coordinator and have his son be the coach in waiting. I don't think there's too much truth to that, but maybe crazier things have happened.
Yeah,
it's a possible thing. I think for me, I want to know, people are like, oh man, this is going to help his legacy, but I want to know, how much is this going to hurt his legacy? Because when you have Tiger Woods, and I've known this with my family a few times, is Tiger Woods really helping himself right now? Is he really helping his legacy when he's not even making, some of the biggest golf events? Or is it really, just be done, end on a good note? And I get, people get, really don't like you said, don't want to go sit on the beach, but, really, if you care, if it's for your legacy, then you shouldn't just be doing it like that. Because I don't think this is going to help his legacy. It might even hurt it.
I think it's a very reasonable way to think, but I think that people that are operating in that place, that it is their life. That Joe Paterno, when Joe Paterno retired, he died.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's an old man, but there's a whole other story with that, the scandal. But there are people that a lot of times coaches they are so committed to this is their total existence that doing anything other than that is totally unfathomable.
Yeah.
And Bill Belichick, there was a documentary a couple years ago. Belichick and Saban are buddies, and it was a HBO documentary and followed him around. It was like all access behind the scenes. It was really cool. But before the documentary started, they kept the cameras rolling. But Belichick and Saban said, "Hey, we always see each other, and let's let us catch up before you start recording us. Just let us catch up for a little bit." And so they kept the microphones on, but they let them have their personal time, and they okayed it, so it wasn't like they were being sneaky. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're a fly on the wall. What do these two talk about, right? They just were like, well, why'd you go for it on 3rd and 33 in the AFC Championship, or what you were really wanting to work on your third down coverage, and these guys don't have outside interests.
Yeah,
right.
Bill Belichick doesn't care about what a gallon of milk costs. He's not interested in what the election was like. He lives ball, and I think that at the end of the day, I think more likely than not, I think the NFL is done with Bill Belichick. He's not going to get another job, which is wild to believe. But the game has evolved, and it looks like his time is over, and so he wants to stay around the game. And college was an opportunity for him to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next up, we have: do we think that Travis Hunter was the right choice for the Heisman? Me personally, I think yes. In my eyes, I see Travis Hunter as the Shohei Ohtani of college football, because you make that realization where it's that basically 1-and-1 where Shohei Ohtani is pitching and he's also hitting, and he could do that in the same game if he really wanted to. You have Travis Hunter who's taking 700 snaps on each side of the ball, and that's so impressive. Where you don't see you see Ashton Janty, right? Great running back. But you don't see him lining up at linebacker the next snap and doing that same job. And so, yes, people are like, well, Ashton Janty, he's done so much, he's done all this stuff. But Ashton Janty isn't getting on the other side of the ball. Also, Travis Hunter has little to no breaks. He's offense, he goes and sits on the bench, maybe for the kickoff, and then he's defense right along. And so he has Travis Hunter has such a job, and so yes, maybe he's not leading in receptions or leading in receiving touchdowns, but he's doing such a job that other guys are saying, oh yeah, I could do that, but if they actually tried to step up to that and tried to play cornerback and wide receiver, I don't think they could do it.
Okay.
I think, I like what you said. I think it's really hard to compare a wide receiver and a running back stats-wise, just because there's different stats. I mean, if you put Ashton Janety as a wide receiver, sure, he's not going to have the most yards in the FBS. I mean, obviously not. But I do think, like I was saying, like, you hand the ball off a lot more. Like, there's usually only one running back or one backup, but then you also have multiple wide receivers, a tight end to throw it to. So I think Ashton Janety should have won just because of how many stats he's leading and just the year he really had. He's running for almost the most touchdowns ever in one season, and so I do think I think Janety should have won, but I was not surprised at all they picked Hunter. I think Hunter is definitely an athlete. I think he's more popular than Ashton Janety is, and I think that affects a lot because popularity is big in this day and age.
Especially with the Heisman.
Right.
The Heisman
Especially with the
is
Heisman.
voted on by, I think it's like 1,500 people. There's
Right.
Journalists across the country. It is a much broader spectrum, and so there's been some pushback on that. And I think the marketing piece was in Travis Hunter's favor, and I think, but to the Genty point as well, just like I said about Tyler Warren, everybody knew he was the key of their offense, and he still put up big numbers. But do you think that the whole Power 5, he played in the group of 5, so his caliber of competition, I see it as it is a lower caliber. Who I'd have to look through to see who they faced off against, but they weren't facing off against the Georgia rush defense. They weren't facing off against the Michigan rush defense. So that's where you're going to have to do a little something extra as a group of 5 player to impress me. Question for you guys, though, is of the 3 positions that were played, we're talking about 2 people, but Travis Hunter played both of them, DB, wide receiver, running back. Which do you think is the most difficult position to play?
I would say,
because usually this is a quarterback. The Heisman more recently has been a quarterback-dominated position.
Yeah.
The quarterback is the most difficult position in college in football. So if it's not a quarterback this year, which position do you think is the most challenging, and should that be weighted differently?
I think a linebacker is the hardest.
Between DB, wide receiver, because Travis Hunter, DB, okay. DB. Why?
I think just having to be able to, it's a different from the offense. On offense, correct me if I'm wrong, you memorize the play, know what you're doing, and haul the ball and keep running.
Mm-hmm.
On defense, you have to be able to stop the guy, make sure you're keeping your eyes on the QB, make sure you're doing all. It's a lot more on being able to do defense. You have to learn a lot more. You have to do a lot more than you do on the offensive side.
Andrew?
For me, I think I've heard different people explain it different ways. But yeah, it's almost like in offense you're worrying about yourself. You know what your play is, if you're running a slant, you know what you're doing. So you just do your job, and that's your job.
Mm-hmm.
For defense, especially the position that Travis Hunter is playing, you're worrying about many different guys.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be guarding this guy, you could be guarding this guy, and then you have to try to match up. They're calling audibles. You have to match up who you're blocking and stuff like that. And so I think just how hurried it is with the different audibles and play calls to try to match that offense, and 2, just having to worry about all those different people. I think that's what makes it harder for me.
If you had to face off, you're both right. That you're absolutely right. DB is the hardest position of all of them to play. I agree with you. You guys make great points. If you had to go onto the field and either run a route versus Travis Hunter, defend Travis Hunter, or tackle Ashton Janety, which would you power rank? Which ones what do you think you could have the most success with? Which one would you have the least chance of accomplishing? And then the other one would be the one in the middle.
Okay.
I think running a route on Travis Hunter would be the easiest.
Okay.
I agree. Because I'm slow. So Travis Hunter and Ashton Janety are both going to adjust me.
Okay, running a route, what's your route? Using your skill set, what do you think you've got the advantage on Travis Hunter?
Where are you
going to attack him?
I think my advantage is that I don't know what I'm doing. And so he's going to be like, why is this guy not running a proper route?
So anarchy, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because usually DBs, one of the things that DBs will do is if they're in off coverage and let's say they give you an 8 or 10 yard cushion. As you run your route, let's say you're running straight at at Travis Hunter. As you cross thresholds, the DB is taught throw like okay, after he passes 3 yards, okay, the slant's out, the quick out's out. After you pass 5 yards, okay, the shallow cross is out, the quick out is out. You start knocking them off. And so there's a checklist that DBs go through of, okay, now once we're past 10 yards, he's either going to the post, he's going to the flag, or he's going fade. You're saying he can't put you in he can't do any checkoffs because Andrew's the chaos factor. You might just 100%. Lay down.
Yeah.
You could just roll over.
Uh-huh.
Maybe wet yourself a little bit, a little pee come out.
I don't know about that one. But
I think what I would do is just run something that it's just hard to stop. Like, you just run, like, if he's playing far enough back, you just run around to the side. And
I don't think he's going to give you guys a lot of cushion. I think he's he's going to be up nose to nose, and he's going to try to use those long go-go gadget arms he's got, and he's going to try to lock you down and embarrass you at the line of scrimmage. So, Anson, if that's his technique, and you're lined up in your 2-point stance, your wide receiver stance, and he's standing right in front of you, and he pushes those hands out right in front and tries to lock up, what are you doing? What's your counter move?
They just give up.
Okay.
I think
fetal position.
I think I'm just falling on the ground.
I think what you have to do is you have to go to the sideline. If either me or Andrew wanted to go something to the sideline, wanted to catch something while Travis Hunter was defending us, we'd have to go sideline.
You have to go sideline, meaning you're running a route that breaks toward the sideline, or you're just trying to get off the field.
We're running a route towards the sideline.
Okay.
Like, we're not going to be able to beat him one-on-one vertical or one-on-one like anything. Just like a cover. We're going to have to go sideline.
Okay.
So the throw needs to be able to be where we can catch it going out of bounds and where Travis Hunter would be behind us.
Okay. Usually, DBs will say the sideline is your friend. They want to compress you. If you're out of the wide receiver position, they're going to want to try to push you as much as possible. Because if they can hold you a yard away from the sideline and they're still in bounds, you've got no other options. The opposite of that is to say if you can get across their leverage, a lot of times they're trying to push you to the sideline depending on the way the coverage is going. But if you can get across their face, then you've got the entirety of the field. And you can let those horses fly, man. You can let those wheels roll.
Well, that's the problem.
And now you've got him rattled. He's in no man's land.
That's the problem. Me and Andrew can't just let the wheels fly.
I think
then you one hand sticky the catch, and then you give him the gritty as you go into the end zone.
Well, how many times out of 100 do you think you're catching a pass?
On Travis Hunter?
Yeah.
None.
Prime you.
None.
None?
Oh, prime?
Yeah.
I could have
Prime
Ben
Ben
Hartsock.
Hartsock.
I'm not the guy in his mid-40s.
No.
No, I could have boxed a guy out. Yeah, I knew how to use my size. When I was playing for how about this for an NFL stat? When I was working for ESPN Radio, I asked, they have a whole department called Stats and Information. It's I don't know how many people, dozens of people that they only study stats. And they put them out for every game, every team, all the time. I was going to speak at an event, and I said, hey, Stats and Info, I said, can you do a study on my career in a way that find something only Ben Hartsock did? And I said, I want it to make me look stupid. I want it to be an embarrassing stat against me. And so the
like
guy,
most stumbles, most trips.
Well, what he found is that in my career, I played 10 years, which is a long career. I only scored 1 touchdown. Never has a tight end, a position that catches a lot of touchdowns usually. Think about George Kittle and Travis Kelce and those guys. There's never been a tight end in this century play as long as I had with scoring so little touchdowns. So that's my stat of excellence is in 10 years, 1 touchdown.
And this is why we have him on this podcast.
Yeah.
Because he is a record setter.
Record
breaker.
That's right. You should get like the little plaque for that and everything.
Yeah, so I've got the ball. It's in my office, prominently displayed. That's just the one,
That's
the
amazing.
only one singular touchdown I caught.
Okay, this was your topic earlier. So we have QB situations, so like the three different ones. So one, Penn State. Back to that. How do you feel about that?
Well, what do you guys think is the right thing to do there? What should have it is a conflict of interest. The transfer portal opened and there's been there's always a bunch of portal openings and a bunch of movement, right? Think
Yeah.
about Dylan Gabriel transferred, Will Howard transferred. There's a whole bunch of transfers across college football. Bo Pribula is on a team that is in the playoff.
Yeah.
He's the backup. He wants to start. So, do you think he made the right call by saying, he's making this decision because he's saying, if I wait till when Penn State loses, it could be
Right.
a month from
January,
now.
right.
It could be a month from now,
And
and
there's
there
gonna
won't
be
be any spots left. Okay, that's the other side. But the flip side of that is, hey, dude, we're trying to go win a championship. So, what do you think is the right move?
Well, and you see guys like from like Georgia, you see Dylan Raiola switching his commitment from Georgia to Nebraska because he wanted to start and he didn't think he would start at Georgia, maybe not at all. And so you see guys like that, and there's just like you want playing time, but also is it worth it? And it really is like you want to like be able to start and you want to be able to play, but the like mental gymnastics of it is, which would I rather do? Would I rather be on a good team and just wait till it's my time to start, or would I rather be on maybe a worse team but be able to start? And so it's like, which would you prefer? And so I think just leaving a team like that close to like the playoffs, and you're in this playoff team, and just leaving to the transfer portal is kind of crazy. And I think what he did was bad. But yeah,
Hanson?
I think it was the right move. I think if you want a job in the NFL, you can't just sit behind somebody. They're not going to draft you sitting behind something. They're really, you can come sit behind for this team too. No, they're not going to pay you for sitting on the bench. And you're not going to, you need playing time. You need progression. So I think that's the right move. And I do think, like what you said about, I was going to mention, it could be till January. There could be no open spots left. He doesn't want to go play for Cincinnati. He would like to play for a Power 4 team and someone like that, and not just be able to sit behind Drew Allen.
Yeah.
And I do think I think it was the right move though, because I do think it saved him another year of sitting behind somebody. And I don't he's a junior.
He's a junior.
Yeah.
He's got one more year,
right?
And so if he were to stay at Penn State, Drew Aller's already announced that he's coming back,
right.
so he'll have spent. So your argument is logical. I disagree with it fundamentally, 1,000%. And you guys both made good points. You both pointed out both the same things that I would say as to the logical reason to stay with the team and the logical reason to do your own thing. And at the end of the day, I said this on my show today, you have to make a decision. Are you a team supporter or are you an individual supporter? College sports, historically, by my view, has been about the team. I had an awesome chapter of Ohio State history, but there have been chapters before me and there are chapters after me. But now college sports is more about, no, it's not about being a part of writing a chapter of Georgia football history or Clemson football history. It's about securing your bag. And that's what breaks my heart what breaks my heart is we build a system to where your logic, Anson, makes sense and is justifiable.
Right.
I disagree with it, but I'm in the minority on that. Most people say I'm just mad about, I'm just mad that players are getting paid now, and it's
well,
just
I don't think it's the right thing. It was the right move for him. I don't think it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So saying it was better for his game, but it wasn't the best for his team.
Yeah.
And he didn't set a good example for anybody else. They're like, oh man, this guy really wasn't that good of a guy. Being able to, he doesn't make himself look great, but I did think he did the right thing for his game.
Well, he's from Pennsylvania. He did his. They call them love letters. All these players that are transferring, they have love letters that they, Nittany Lion Nation and Alabama, so thankful, love letters. And he grew up in Pennsylvania saying, I dreamed of playing for Penn State, and he has played for Penn State. The thing that's going to be a bummer with this is, let's say he leaves the team, because he's leaving the team, not going to play this weekend, it looks like. Let's say they win the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he was that close to having it. A Pennsylvania kid, you mentioned, I played Ohio State. I grew up in Ohio. It was a really special thing, like a Georgia kid growing up and playing for the Bulldogs and winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
He's not going to have that opportunity. Now, he's maybe going to have a bunch of money, and everybody needs money. Things cost money. We all recognize the utility of that. I I think it's a bad message to send, and we see it already. The trickle down. We say that we take our cues, we take we look to our heroes as to what is right and what is wrong. In college sports, there's a bunch of heroes we all look up to. You guys look up to the players today. When I was your age, I looked up to players, and I learned. Eddie George, you ever heard of Eddie George? Eddie George won a Heisman back in the 90s, before you guys were even born. He was the biggest thing. He was Derrick Henry before Derrick Henry was a thing. He played in a Citrus Bowl. He played in a Citrus Bowl against Tennessee. The last time Tennessee played Ohio State was in the 96 Citrus Bowl, and I would have been right about your guys' age. And Eddie George, nobody ever thought about Eddie George not playing in that game because you finished all the games that you played in.
Yeah.
But I try to think about a 15, 14, 16-year-old version of myself today. They don't get that. Like, you guys have to sit there and say, Drew Aller made a business decision.
Right.
Yeah.
You go get your bag, young man. Like that. That's to me the bad precedent that's being set, because you already see it that high school players transfer from school A to school B.
Yeah.
Well, because all the players at the upper level are transferring from school A to school B, and it's financially logical, but it doesn't make it right from a bigger picture perspective. So that's why I'm kind of against it.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, like you said, like that team aspect, like you're leaving that team, and I think of teams a lot of the times like a family. Like, y'all are gonna look out for each other, but at the same time, if you're just leaving that, it's almost like leaving a family. Like, that has a big impact, not just on you, but on like the place you're leaving. And so, yeah, I think it's become less of like a family and less of like a tight knit group. Like, this is the place I'm at, and I love these guys, and these are the guys I'm gonna stay with, because nothing can pull me away from them, because I'm gonna play here. To, yeah, like what you said, like what is the best financial and like business decision for me to be able to go here? Like, where am I gonna get more money? Where's my talent gonna look better so that I can go get more money?
When you talk to guys that played in my era of the NFL, you would ask them. I played for a bunch of different teams. I lived some of these harsh realities of being a pro football player. I got cut from 5 different teams. Like, that was just par for the course. I was able to earn money doing it, but I was cut from the teams. And because of that, I didn't have that connection. When you talk to guys that played in my era and you say, what was your favorite team? Where did you have the most fun? I've never had a player say it otherwise. They all say college. College was where we had the most fun, because you knew I was on this team, and I was going to be here for the 4 years, 5 years if I redshirt, and it wasn't about the money yet. It was about chasing a championship, trying to get into the NFL, all that together. I think that we're changing this in real time, that now the difference between college and the NFL, it's not as much. So I don't know that any of these college guys are having that same connection that we got to get 10, 20 years ago when this. So that's one of the changes that's the reality. But at the end of the day, people justify it by saying, well, there's money, so that's okay. And you're never going to convince me to agree with that. I can only understand the logic. It's like we can justify anything because there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
Right. I think this whole thing always brings me back to the game of Survivor. And if you ever watch the show Survivor,
Are we doing an alliance?
This is how it feels, though. It's like the alliance, the team, your team. You think you're stuck. You think you have somebody to go to the end with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until you realize that it is best for you not to stay behind this person, because you realize this person could make it to the final 3, and you might not win because you've been stuck behind. You've been a shadow to this person the whole game, and so you need to move away from this. And I think this is the big thing. So it really just every time I hear something about like this, like the transfer portal, he left his team like middle of the season, like it brings me back to really the show of Survivor, and that's how I see this.
And what is Survivor known for? Backstabbing. And turning, double crossing each other.
That's why I'm saying I think it was a good move, but I don't think it was
and that's right. That's the world we've kind of built, is one that justifies and in a lot of ways encourages that nasty behavior. And it's 5 years ago, I had a guy ask a couple old guys like me, one guy, I'm an Ohio State guy, and another guy from Michigan. We were kind of like, why are these guys opting out of bowl games, right? There's bowl games are happening, and guys are opting out of that. Now you got guys opting out of playoff games with what broke Beulah. The host asked us, he said, when is the right time to do what's right by the individual? When is it okay to be selfish? And I said, never. Never. And to like zoom out a minute, like one of the areas of scripture that has taught me about never, I'll read it because I want to make sure to get it right, but it's Philippians 2:3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit, but with humility think of others as being better than yourselves. When you have right now, money is the North Star.
Oh, right.
Get your bag, get your play times, and you can get to the NFL. That justifies everything. But if you have a different compass, if you have a different perspective, that's why Dabo Swinney, who's a believer, he's in the business of developing young men, and as a result, wins come out of it. Success, football teams do well, but it's a different North Star, and that's why he's been resistant, and that's why he's been taken to the cleaners. A lot of people laugh at him for having that North Star, but I agree with Dabo Swinney. I want his way of running a program to exist because it's bigger than just championships and winning, because he knows that he lives that Philippians 2:3 life of think of others being more important than yourselves. Bill Belichick at North Carolina, I played for the Patriots for 4 days. My last gasp in the NFL was as an NFL player. And that's what the Patriots were known for, because Bill Belichick, he's not interested in your well-being. He looks at players as a commodity. Use them as long as you can, and the moment they're no longer useful, throw them to the side. The dude cut Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how Bill. So now I don't think he's going to do well in college, but maybe he will, because college is very similar to the NFL. That you can say you're not cutting it at North Carolina, you're out.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's the healthy way to run college athletics. But it may be the best way to run college athletics. That's why I don't know if he's the last BlackBerry or the first iPhone.
Yeah. Well, and then you have another QB situation like Georgia. You see Carson Beck getting hurt. How do you think that the Georgia Bulldogs are going to do with Gunnar Stockton at the quarterback?
He doesn't have game experience. He did well when he got into that situation. You talk about thrown into the lion's den. Mm-hmm. That hit the injury to Carson Beck, and Carson Beck. We live here in Georgia, so I always, whenever I do my radio shows, I say I've got plenty of Georgia fans that can tell me they're ready to be done with Carson Beck. He has been a streaky up and down player. He's had multiple games with multiple interceptions. He seemed to be working that out later in the season, but I think the injury, I think he's out. I don't think he's going to play.
Yeah.
Gunnar Stockton, you're going to have to try to make him as comfortable as possible. I think he did a good job, in considering he got thrown into the scene in the SEC championship. But I don't think that it's kind of like you guys talk baseball a bunch, but like wins versus replacement.
Yeah.
He wasn't having to beat Joe Burrow. He's not replacing Joe Burrow. Right. He was replacing Carson Beck, who was having a pretty average year. So as long as Gunnar Stockton can be as close to average as Carson Beck was having this year, Georgia should be as good as they could have expected.
Yeah, I think it definitely would have been easier if it was last year, because you had those weapons. But yeah, I don't think it's going to do too much. We've talked about it before, where Carson Beck was going into the year very confident in himself and thinking that he was going to be the first overall pick in the draft. And he hasn't produced as much as I know Kirby Smart wanted him to produce, and all the Georgia fans around have wanted him to produce. But yeah, I agree. I think if he can just do what he did when he came into that game, I think they're going to be pretty all right.
Yeah, I think they'll be fine. There's not really much to say about this. I think the really thing is him and Carson Beck are both in the same room, and they're both learning the same stuff. And really the only difference is that Carson Beck is getting playing time.
Yeah.
And I think really it's just the difference. I mean, we've seen it from Stetson Bennett and then Carson Beck coming in. Like, Carson Beck did a great job, and I think we'll see the same thing out of Gunnar Stockton here. I think they'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it is that experience where, like, Gunnar and Stockton were thrown into the SEC championship game, which was crazy.
How about that hit he took?
Yeah.
That was a massive
hit. Yeah, that was
Gunnar Stockton hit.
I was actually...
He just got up, his face. That was really funny to see his face like that.
Yeah.
His eyes rolled back in his head. I thought he was dead.
I was actually at a Georgia Storm lacrosse game, and we were doing the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
National anthem. And this guy's watching on his phone as he does it. And this guy just goes, "Oh!" as he watched just the hit stick. Yeah. He just goes, "Oh!" and everybody looked around and he goes, "Game, Georgia game." And we were dying laughing about it. But yeah, it was a hard hit. But I mean,
it was a scary. Not to tell him off his head, it went flying.
That was a big hit, and it was the timing of that. I don't know if Gunnar Stockton could have gone back into the game. Like, I know they put Carson Beck out there to score the game winner, but if that it was towards the end of the game. But if Gunnar Stockton had to do another drive, I don't know that he could have done it.
Yeah,
it was a hard
hit.
Big hit.
Yeah,
big hit.
And the last one we have is just Texas. How much do we think that Arch Manning is going to play during the playoffs?
Well, should and will are two very different things. He should have played a lot more in the SEC championship game, but he didn't. I think they would have done a lot better with him running. We saw it with Haynes King with Georgia Tech versus Georgia. They couldn't stop a running QB like the whole game. And so I do think for them not using Arch and not taking advantage and realizing like, oh, this is where Georgia's going to struggle, they just didn't use him. They used him for I don't even know if they used him once. They might have used the only time he was in the game was when the fake snap through his legs to the running back.
I like that play.
Right, that was a great beautiful play. I love that.
But I think they should use him more. People know how to handle Quinn Ewers. They know you're not gonna get to the QB too often, but you're gonna need to pressure him. But really, just being able, Arch Manning it's a different aspect because he can run, but he also can throw. Mm-hmm. So just using that we talked about in the past, like even using some trick plays, like it'd be a lot easier to do trick plays with that. So I do think that they should use him a lot more. I don't think they will though.
Well, it's playing with two quarterbacks is tricky as a player, especially like in my world where I was blocking and like I have more experience playing with multiple running backs, meaning if we were running the same play, if we were running power to the right, pulling a guard and kick out block and all of that, if we were doing it versus with pick out two players, Edger and James, and we were running power, he liked me to block it, or he would set it up differently than if LaDainian Tomlinson were running that play. Same thing with a quarterback. A quarterback comes in the game, he's got a different cadence, and he's got a different way that he calls the play and operates and all that stuff. And so there can be a little bit of it breaks your rhythm as an offense. Yeah. And so I trust Steve Sarkisian. He's got an incredible resume as a play caller. You can question, it's easy to second guess, just like people are second guessing Ohio State's game plan versus Michigan. It's easy to second guess after the fact, but I think that Sarkisian has earned enough credibility that when to push, when to not push reps for Arch Manning. Because it's complicated. Every time Manning's not on the field, I don't care how confident Quinn Ewers is, he's like, man, why are they putting the anointed one out there?
Right.
Why are they plenty of people want Arch Manning to have been the quarterback the whole season.
Oh, right.
So what does that do to the starter? Ewers has been entrenched as a starter even when he was out from injury. Manning was playing. There were plenty of people saying, just go with Manning. So now it's down to the end of the season. You've only got, 1, 2, 3, 4 games to win the whole thing. You don't really have to worry as much about Quinn Ewers' ego or keeping him happy. Yeah. This is the end of the Ewers era. You want it to be as successful as possible, and if that means putting Arch Manning in there more, this is the time to use it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think definitely you watched, because there's not too many teams with a good running quarterback like that. I think Haynes King is a good example where Georgia just didn't see it coming. Mm-hmm. There were so many times that they just let Haynes King just run through either their D-line or just run around. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely hard, and it's definitely a learning curve when you have that running back like that. And so I would say they definitely need to use Manning more than they have been. But yeah. Okay, so next up, we have our bracket. So basically, me and Anson have made a bracket. Have you made a bracket or no?
I'm going to shoot from the hip. Okay,
so you'll just tell us. So should we go? We'll go one at a time. Okay, so I have, for me, I have the first game is Ohio State versus Tennessee. Number 8 Ohio State, number 9 Tennessee. I have Ohio State.
Yeah, you do.
Anson, you have?
I have Tennessee.
Boo!
And from an unbiased opinion, who do you have?
He's definitely picking Tennessee.
No, I have Ohio State.
What? Anson. Anson really likes Tennessee's defense.
I've been bragging on Tennessee's defense all year. I think Tennessee has a really good defense. I think their offense has has a lot to prove, but I don't see it there. I don't see it from Ohio State.
Tennessee has a great defense. Tennessee under Josh Heupel is not what. If you just think Josh Heupel, Tennessee, you think spread offense, you think tempo. That's not what Tennessee is. They are a defensive-led team that runs the ball, and specifically to that defense, they're good at stopping the run. They're mid-pack in the SEC at stopping the pass. As long as Ohio State goes to what it's best at, throwing the football to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Mbuka and on, and Carnell Tate and on, Ohio State should have a distinct advantage there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ohio State has got it. Just because, like you said, just they have a really...
Anson, how long have you known that you were going to make that pick and know that it was just going to crush me as your friend? Did you do that knowing that I just want to hurt my friend's feelings? Is that what you wanted to do?
No, I didn't. I don't have...
You're being objective?
Look, yeah.
How dare you?
Hey, I'm being full statistical.
He's
and you're
being
gonna
biased.
be happy with mine. No, this is real. With my power rankings, I put Ohio State at 2, which it might have been a little too high, but we'll see. But last podcast I put it at 2, so we'll see. Anyways, next up we have Texas versus Clemson. I think we all agree, right? Texas.
I think Texas.
I believe Texas wins this game.
Yeah, I think Texas wins just because you saw Clemson lose to those worst unranked teams. You saw them lose to South Carolina. I like that.
South Carolina's ranked.
Well, they're ranked now. They haven't been for much of the season, and they've lost to some of the guys. But I definitely think Texas just is the better all-around team. Next up, you have Notre Dame versus Indiana. I actually had Notre Dame winning this, and then you convinced me that Indiana was better.
All right. You
I
will be wrong. Usually it's fade Hartsock. Go against it. Usually most of my six-pack of picks, if you pick against me, you win. But you're maybe you'll be my good.
Your explanation just made so much sense. I was like, you know what? Because I think Notre Dame has definitely played some good people, but I think none of what they've done has really shocked me. I've been like, oh wow, Notre Dame is really good at this one thing. Mm-hmm. I think they're just kind of above average, definitely. But they're kind of good at all these different things, but nothing really stands out. Or they're like, oh my gosh, Notre Dame is the best at doing this. I don't know, the best at passing.
Notre Dame has been in win or go home mode since the loss to Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Are they fatigued by that, or are they battle hardened by that? I think they're battle hardened. I think this is a good game, but I think that that's an advantage for them that Indiana knew after they lost to Ohio State. We're still good. We're fine. Mm-hmm. You saw that after the game. They didn't have to live with. Notre Dame knew after the loss to Northern Illinois, the most embarrassing loss of the season.
Yeah,
we don't have the margin to lose another one, or else we won't make it to the playoffs. So they're battle tested.
Yeah, that same thing here. They can't lose another one, or they won't make it to the next round. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame.
All right,
that's just going against me, huh? Okay, next up we have Penn State versus SMU. I have Penn State. Anson?
You can't. SMU is not beating Penn State at Penn State Stadium. It's just not happening.
I think this is the most lopsided matchup. Kevin Jennings and SMU's offense is explosive, but it's not. They put points up, but they're not ground and pound. They're not built for cold weather, win a game to grinding it out. It's been high theatrics, high drama for them to get there, and I think Penn State just kind of like a boa constrictor, just squeezes the life out of them.
Yeah, I don't think SMU has much of a chance. I'm proud of SMU. I'm proud of what they've been able to do.
Yeah, we're proud of SMU.
Yeah,
That's good.
We're proud of SMU.
We're very proud of them, but I just don't see it out of SMU. But I'm
pat
proud
them
of
on the head. That's good, guys.
Good job, buddy. But yeah. So next round for me, my next round would be my next quarterfinals, right? Yeah. My next quarterfinal game would be Ohio State versus Oregon. And I picked Ohio State. I think Ohio State, if they get to play Oregon, wants to win so badly because Will Howard didn't slide fast enough. And they should have won that game, and they should be 11-1. So I think they're going to be so determined to win that game. And like everybody always says, it's hard to beat a team twice. And so I think Ohio State, if they get to that game, it just wants to win so bad.
Yeah, if Ohio State was going to be Tennessee, which they're not, I think they'd beat Oregon. But I think Tennessee beats Ohio State, but I think Oregon absolutely sort of destroys Tennessee here.
You got Oregon.
I have Oregon and Tennessee. Number 1 Oregon, number 9 Tennessee. I think Oregon wins this game.
As long as Ohio State doesn't let Michigan beat them twice, by struggling against Tennessee, meaning if they get the win versus Tennessee, they will shake off the bad vibes. There's like a dark cloud over Columbus right now.
Yeah.
They go into the Oregon game in revenge mode, and I think that game was a incredibly tight down to the very last slide at the end of the game. And I think Ohio State can beat a team in Oregon. Oregon has been the most complete and the most. They've won by a bunch. The Big Ten championship was a track meet, and they also beat Wisconsin on a last-second field goal, 13-16. So they've done it all, and they've won in all the different ways. But I think if Ohio State can get into revenge mode, I think they take care of them in that game.
Yeah, look at that. I'm 5 for 5 with the sports broadcaster, which he might be bad at picks, but that has to be a good thing, right? I don't know, maybe.
Look, I lost in the regular season picks for the few weeks we did pick.
He did. I won that. I was like 15-6, and he was like 10.
I don't even want to. I was like,
I'm way sub 500 in my picks. Way sub 500.
Well, maybe this is a bad thing then. Okay, wait. So we both have Texas, Arizona State, right?
Yeah.
I chose Arizona State.
I chose Arizona State as well.
This might shock Ben. Ben, where are you at?
Look, before we get to Ben, I want to talk first. All right. I think Cam Scatebo.
Scatterbo. Yeah, I've messed it up. I only can correct because I messed it up too. Cam Scatterbo.
Scatterbo, okay. Cam Scatterbo, I think he's
got
really
his own
good.
hamburger, by the way. That's his NIL deal.
Actually?
Yes, the Scatterburger. You get it at some restaurant in Arizona.
I was going to say, where's that at?
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I still think.
So what about Cam? What is your point with Cam Scatterburger?
I think he's really good. I think he's underestimated for how good he actually is. And I also think Sam Levitt is also underestimated. I do think that they're going to go out and surprise Texas. They're going to have They're going to have more weeks to prepare for this than Texas is. So I think they're going to be ready for this game. I mean, Arizona State for the last 2 seasons, they were projected to be the bottom of the Big 12.
Yeah.
Big 12 this season. They went 3-9 in both their last seasons. So I think they're ready for this game.
The coach at Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, was joking around how apparently their chances to win the Big 12 was the 6th biggest odds. Like they were the 6th biggest underdog in history. Like only the Miracle on Ice back in the 80s, America versus Russia, was like a little bit above them. And he was kind of laughing about, like, it's not like, this isn't the Russians versus the United States level of upsets. Right. But they are a team that got hot at the right time. This is what the 12-team format is. They were struggling earlier, but they got hot and are playing great. Sam Levitt, I'll be surprised if he's on even their quarterback next year. He's going to get a Brinks truck. He's going to get a lot of offers to transfer after the season if he wants to. But Texas, outside of Ohio State, Texas's roster is just so impressive, and I think that they haven't looked to struggle. Even the loss in the SEC championship was an incredible game, and it wasn't the beating they took against Georgia. I think they take care of a team that's hot in Arizona State, but they're not on the same weight class as Texas.
So we just diverged there, I guess. Next game I have is Indiana versus Georgia. You have what?
I have Notre Dame, Georgia.
Notre Dame, Georgia. But do we? But I think that Georgia wins just barely.
I think Georgia beats Notre Dame or Indiana. It doesn't matter.
I agree.
I think they blow them both out of the water.
Georgia is the team of all these teams that have looked great and looked bad. The Jekyll and Hyde, they've looked like werewolves and they've looked like puppies. Yeah. Georgia is the one that when it is in werewolf mode, it looks like whoa.
Yeah. It's like a werewolf.
Like a werewolf, yeah, like with all the veins and the fur and the slobber. So I've got Indiana facing them. This is where Indiana's road comes to an end. And outside of SMU, Indiana is the most impressive glow up in this football season. I mean, they've never been good. You have to go back to the 60s to when they ever won 10 or more games. So it's an awesome, awesome story. But I don't think Indiana gets past Georgia in this game.
Yeah, I think Alex happy enough as an Indiana fan. He's just happy they got there. My last game is Penn State versus Boise State. Anson, you have.
I also have Penn State, Boise State.
Okay, so we all have Penn State, Boise State. I have Penn State winning.
I had to go Boise State here. I think Ashton J&T, so close to winning the Heisman. I think he just sort of runs it. I think he's going to run over this Penn State defense.
Wait, Boise State?
Boise State?
Get it then, son. Okay.
But what do you have?
I don't have Boise State winning this game.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, the fact that Boise State got the bye as a group of 5, in a world where earlier we were talking about SMU versus Alabama,
Right.
I think more than likely you're going to say no more group of 5 automatic qualifiers and put Alabama in.
Yeah.
That's the future. Now, if Boise State can win and win convincingly, that helps the group of 5 keep its path to access to the playoff.
Right.
I just don't see that team. The Boise State's a good story, and they're fortunate that the group of 5 got an automatic bid into the college football playoff. I don't think 3 years from now, 2 years from now, there's going to be automatic bids for group of 5 teams.
Well, they kept a close game with Oregon. They lost by 3 points to Oregon early in the year. I think they can beat Penn State.
Games early in the season are worth way less at this point in the season.
I agree.
I don't have yet my algorithm of wins and losses in week 1 are less meaningful than wins and losses late in the season.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying the Oregon team's not changing. It's the same Oregon team. It still is.
Boise State, well, it wasn't the Mountain West Championship, but it was the last regular season game. They almost got beat by a no-name team. I can't even remember which team it was. So I look at that and say that's more of a problem for Boise State than them playing well against Oregon early in the season.
I agree with your point.
I have a question. So we kind of had this joke about UNLV. Basically, what happens if UNLV got into that Mountain West Championship and beat Boise State, and somehow the odds happened where they were in the playoffs? We just kind of had a joke. Like, do you think that would actually be possible or no?
Yeah, I mean there have
Yeah.
been a lot of things that moved. I would have been more fired up if Army would have made it in. That would have been awesome. If in a world where you're trying to manufacture to get maximum chaos,
Right.
I'm always trying to manufacture maximum chaos. I would have liked to have seen Army in the playoff.
No,
That'd be cool. Yeah. Okay, so
Semifinals.
I have Ohio State, Arizona State. Anthony, you have?
I have Arizona State, Oregon.
And then Ben has Ohio State,
Texas.
Okay. I have Ohio State beating Arizona State.
I have Ohio State beating Texas.
I have Oregon beating Arizona State.
Yeah, Anson's bracket is just so far away from mine and Ben's.
Swing big, man, Ben.
Wait, you said who?
Oregon beats Arizona State because Dylan Gabriel. Arizona State's going to run out of luck at some point. And it's going to be this semifinals.
All right.
Okay, yeah. Because I picked Arizona State in the quarterfinals, I think Arizona State is just going to run out of steam. And, it's just going to end. I definitely think, I'm kind of looking back on Texas, Arizona State and kind of regretting my decision. But we'll say Arizona State. But, yeah, I definitely think Ohio State is just, like you said, they're going to win the race in every category versus Arizona State.
Ohio State, Texas is going to be an incredible game.
Yeah.
If it gets there.
That's where we're going to get. And Ohio State
And
will win an epic 12-team playoff battle of titans, and Ohio State gets the win.
Definitely.
Signature win for Will Howard. Will Howard, the transfer quarterback. His legacy is being written. Like, the whole reason Ohio State has this new quarterback was to win the big games. Because the guy that was Kyle McCord was the quarterback at Ohio State. He threw the most throwing yards in college football this season with Syracuse. So he's a good quarterback, but it was big games. So Will Howard has to prove he was worth getting rid of the previous guy. And these next several weeks of games are where Will Howard's got to write his legacy.
Yeah. And then my second semifinal game is Georgia versus Penn State. Anson, you have?
Georgia, Boise State.
And then Ben, you have?
Georgia, Penn State.
Okay. I think Georgia wins.
I also have Georgia winning.
I think Werewolf mode Georgia, like we said, is just going to beat out the Penn State team.
It'll be interesting if in a couple of weeks, I tend to think if it's a UCL injury, like the Tommy John ligament for Carson Beck, he's done.
He's done.
That you don't come back from that. You don't want to rush back from that. Make us another self-serving decision. So Gunnar Stockton's going to have massive growth. It's not undocumented though. Ohio State won its first its first playoff national championship, the first one, 2014, with its third string quarterback.
Yeah.
They lost the starter early in the season, Braxton Miller. JT Barrett was the backup. He got hurt either the game before the Michigan game, I think it might have been the Michigan game, and then the third string quarterback, Cardale Jones, came in, saved the Michigan game, had an awesome performance in the Big Ten championship, and then got to the playoffs, beat Alabama, and then won the whole national championship. So Gunnar Stockton could be the next Cardale Jones.
Yeah. So me and Ben, that means we both have Ohio State, Georgia as our championship.
And you've
I have
got
Oregon, Georgia.
Oregon, Georgia.
It's glad Georgia made it to all of ours.
I think Ohio State wins it all. And that's not out of like, I want Ben to agree with me.
Yes,
no, I'm so serious. I think Ohio State wins just because of, I think Gunnar Stockton is definitely going to do well, but I don't know how well he's going to be able to lead the team. I know Carson Beck wasn't the greatest, but I think Ohio State just barely beats Georgia, but I think it's going to be an amazing game.
what do you got?
I think Georgia will win the national championship. I'm not being biased, I promise. I'm not being biased.
You are being contrarian though. You're just trying to get under my skin.
Yeah, of course. Always. But I think it's a close game, but I just think Oregon's not ready for a team like Georgia.
All
So
right.
I think Georgia wins the national championship.
Buckeyes by 1,000,000. Fight the team across the field. Show them Ohio's here. Set the earth reverberating with our mighty cheer. Rah, rah, rah. Hit them hard and see how they fall. Never let that team get the ball. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. So let's win that old conference now. That's the Ohio State fight song.
And I'm going to tell Lindsay to skip till 1:46 to hear you sing that. She's going to be like, ah! Yeah, so we have that. Our last thing is what you missed. So
Right,
it's
I sort of wrapped it up for football.
yeah, kind of the segment where we just talk about,
Sort of run over stuff.
whatever.
What you missed?
Yeah, what you missed.
The hottest podcast in all the land.
Exactly. So whatever you missed in...
Mostly baseball.
Mostly
This is all
baseball. Yeah, this one's all baseball. But yeah, basically the first thing we have is...
Soto to the Mets, 15-year, $765 million.
I'm going to need you to say that louder because that was not big enough for what happened.
Juan Soto signed with the New York Mets on a 15-year, $765 million contract.
So basically...
He's so special. I'm so proud of that man.
So basically, Soto is locked down for 15 years, basically probably his entire career. That's till he's 41. $765 million.
Number one free agent gone.
Yeah, we'll bring in Ben, our expert on MLB. How do you feel about this, Ben?
I think I should have played baseball. I was a terrible baseball player. I cried after every strikeout in Little League.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Yeah,
But
but
after every drop pass too in college?
No, that didn't happen. No.
but yeah, so we have me and Anson are kind of worried as Braves fans because we have Soto, and unless he gets traded, which I don't see happening. I mean, maybe
We're
farther
stuck
down the
with
road.
Soto for 15 years.
Yeah, so we might be stuck with Soto in our division for 15 years, and he's definitely a big power hitter. The next thing we have is Red Sox get Garrett Crochet, really going from one Sox to another Sox. Basically, he was very, very good for the White Sox, but as they had that historically awful season, being one of the only teams, or it might have been the only team to lose 20 games in a row, he was shipped off. The White Sox kind of just only have Luis Robert Jr. now, but the Red Sox get Crochet. The Red Sox were kind of missing those rotation spots, and so the Red Sox getting Crochet is going to be really good for them.
Yeah. Nathan Eovaldi, which we thought might go to the Braves, did not, and he's back with the Rangers on a 3-year, $75 million deal.
Yep, re-signed. Willie Adames to the Giants for 7 years, $182 million. Young guy, so this is a really influential contract, and somebody we would have also loved to see at the Braves. But he's a Giant, and I think he's going to fit really well. They had that spot, they needed that middle infield guy, and they got Willie Adames.
Yeah. Devin Williams was traded to the Yankees for Nestor Cortez, which was actually a big move, and I was not really expecting this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I think of Nestor Cortez,
I think of the Yankees.
I think of the Yankees. He's a Yankee guy, but He's gone. And Devin Williams to the Yankees really
That helps
Devin
him open
Williams
a lot.
Yeah, and Devin Williams really proved himself this year with the Brewers. Next up, we have the Yankees again.
Get our boy,
Yeah,
Max Fried.
Max Fried, $218 million, the most for a left-handed pitcher ever. So much like Ben's one touchdown for a tight end record, you got Max Fried breaking the record for the most money for a left-handed pitcher.
Yes, that was sad. Kyle Tucker, not Alex Bregman. The Cubs were interested in Alex Bregman, but Kyle Tucker was traded to the Cubs, and this was a surprising trade and pretty much a ripoff for the Astros.
Yeah, the Astros really didn't get many people. They got the number 5 prospect, which he should be good, but in the next couple of years. But yeah, I think Kyle Tucker, he's going to be influential for the next couple of years. He's getting into his years, but he's definitely going to be influential for the Cubs. And then this just happened like 2 hours ago. You got Bellinger to the Yankees, right?
Yeah. I was surprised. I wasn't just surprised by this. I thought the hole would need to be filled. So I do think this is a good use of money for the Yankees, but I also do think this opens a lot more room for the Cubs.
Yeah, and you see how when the Cubs get Kyle Tucker, that need for Bellinger kind of shied away because why would you need Kyle Tucker, or why would you need Bellinger when you have Kyle Tucker, that strong outfielder,
right?
And then you just have a lot of trade value for Bellinger.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of gonna wrap our podcast up. We do this thing at the end where
I missed the end.
the last thing is we say peace. We all gotta do it together.
Wait. Any last words?
Do you have any last
Thank
words,
you so
Ben?
much for joining.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you so
pumped.
much for joining.
Listen, I'm getting in on the basement of this thing. It's going straight to the moon.
We might get this guy back in sometime, depending on how many stars we give him at the end.
How many stars? Are we rating him?
We might have to.
Are we paying you? I
Might
don't
be for
know.
his resume.
The internet's merciless. It's the Wild West out here.
Dude, don't look this guy up.
Don't look this guy up. Well, we hope you enjoyed our podcast, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.
Peace.